It's really rare to find a small to medium-sized nonprofit organization that doesn't have some sort of history of fundraising events. And in some places, it's the cornerstone of their development program, are these signature fundraising events that they've been doing for a long time. Trustees and board members, volunteers very often have a very large place in them. The community comes to expect them. But it can be very difficult as a development officer to change that course. But there are some important things that we need to ask about what the role is of events in our total development program. And the questions that I think that we need to ask is, how much does it cost us to do these events, and what's the return on our investment? And we very often see that laid out in nice charts that are presented to a board following an event that shows an increase in revenue from last year, and here's what we paid out for food, and here's what the prizes cost, or whatever it might be. But we almost never see one of those that has staff time appropriately positioned within that analysis. And if we started to add in the time that staff spends on a given event in a given year, the return on investment for that begins to plummet, until very often, if you added staff time even for part of the people who are involved, you've got a loss. And if your senior development person, and that may be the only development person, or it may be someone in a long stream of people, is spending much time at all, you can be sure that your return on investment for special events, it could not possibly compare to what that same time involved in major donor relationship building would bring you in the end. I do think there are places for special events.
Talk a little bit about the places, because I agree with you. I think the challenge of special events is there are often other places that are going to be far more cost effective to raising funds, because if the special event is keeping the person from going out and cultivating and or soliciting the very large gift, it's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer.
It's a misuse of time. But talk about the benefits, because there are benefits.
Special events tend to be very public, and people that sometimes don't think they are interested in your organization will attend an event, and if it's a well-done event, something there will move them to a higher level of interest in your organization. But that's one of the questions that you have to ask when you're looking at your event. Does it deepen relationships? If it doesn't do that in any way, if people can come to an event and leave an event and not be any more closely connected to what you do, that's a failed event. So if there's no way that it's deepening relationships, and it may be that it's deepening some relationships with people with whom you already have a great relationship, they just love the event and what it brings to the community, and you have to measure that as well. What would we lose if this was gone? The second question, deepening the relationships, I think is paramount to justifying the time and effort that goes into an event. The second question I think that has to be answered is, does it further our mission? Is this event related in any way to what we do? And I've seen a few examples of things that were sort of appeared to be disconnected and worked anyway, but for the most part, if your event doesn't further the mission of your organization, why are you doing it?
It detracts from it. It
detracts from it. We see from time to time some very, very disjointed things. An organization that is dealing with homeless people in an inner city that does a black tie gala. Working to keep those two things connected can be really, really difficult. One of the best events that I've seen is in Fort Wayne, where an organization that deals with child abuse has an outdoor gathering, a casual gathering, in the university's children's garden, which is a place set aside, beautiful gardens on the university campus, but it's a children's garden, and there's statues there. There are memorial stones to children who've been lost from all different sorts of things. When you're there, it makes perfect sense. So I think that events have to be planned in a way that furthers the mission, and then they can be very, very good. And the third thing is, do they provide a compelling, competitive financial edge? Compelling, competitive financial edge. Doing this brings us money that we would not otherwise be able to get.
Or does it lower the level of support.
Absolutely.
Because there are people who identify events and they buy that ticket, they pay the $100, and so they have done their part.
And
because the organization has defined participation as $100 for that dinner.
Right.
When that same person turns around and writes out a $1,000 check as a contribution to another organization. But by placing so much focus on the event, you lower the perception of what's an appropriate gift for your organization.
I've worked with organizations that have decided that their long-term special event no longer answered these three questions appropriately and was not stewarding the resources of the organization well, and made that transition by, in 1 year, sending out an invitation very similar to what they'd done to their gala or their ball or their $250 a plate dinner. Sent out an invitation that said, this year, all of your contribution goes to the mission that we work together to support. And you sent your money in, but you didn't attend an event. And they really broke the cycle that way of people expecting to attend an event. But I think organizations that rely heavily on special event fundraising share a challenge with organizations that have ticketed events like an orchestra. I bought my ticket. I support it in that way. Well, no, the majority of that ticket price went to pay for that concert that you saw. You're not really being philanthropic. And our message can be much cleaner if we just talk about our mission, leave many of the events aside, and hone in on relationship building that makes perfect sense. So.
Joan, this is one of the primary reasons that I appreciate your being at the table with me on this, because we bring to the table different experiences. My entry into fundraising was working with $100,000 and up donors at the University of Michigan, and before that some work at Yale, and then Vice President Earlham. And I had very little exposure to special events. But as I work with nonprofits around the country, that concept of, well, we need a special event keeps coming up. Right. And intuitively, my sense is that special events, you need to be careful because they can divert your attention away. Whereas you come to this table with a background in the arts, with a background in areas that are known to doing special events and doing special events well. So I really appreciate the fact that you are offering some good advice and counsel and a bit of word of caution about seeing special events as the panacea and the key to effective fundraising.
And one of the interesting things that happens in organizations that have this as a great part of their culture, the special event is a great part of their culture, and it's been very interesting to me to watch when they begin to experience some financial difficulty or some budget drift where it looks like there needs to be some changes, how often well-meaning individuals will suggest adding a new event. Let's just do another event. And my response to that is always, that is the least effective way to help right a ship that's moving in the wrong direction. If you've got a historic event that is very much a part of the culture of your organization, fine, keep it. But don't think you're going to replicate that with a new event and solve all the budget problems. Go visit some folks who are passionate about what you do. You could raise in 2 weeks more money than a year's worth of planning on a new event will ever yield. So it has to be kept in perspective, and yeah, I've done them all, from golf outings to wine tastings to gala balls, and they do have their place. But I will never see that as an effective way to raise large amounts of money for an organization on a continued basis.
Thank you. This is very helpful advice from somebody who knows what they're talking about. Thank you.